I have finished a train today. You want to see? If you're a train nerd, pause to guess what type of train you think this is. I've already talked about it in a video previously. These wheels should be on swivels. It's got an offset boiler with the boiler favoring the fireman's side, not the engineer's side. It's got these three little cylinders mounted vertically. The answer, it's a Shay Locomotive, the most popular geared locomotive that there was. Have a seat and nerd out with me a little bit. When I say that the Shay was a geared locomotive, it just means that they found a different way to transfer all of the energy from the steam boiler into the wheels. The way most steam-powered locomotives at the time worked was that you stoked the fire back in here, and this entire boiler was basically full of tubing. Imagine like if you had a handful of straws packed in there. They would fill this up with water. So the entire thing was a submerged set of straws with a firebox, with a firewall in between them. They would stoke the fire, the heat would run the length of those tubes, heating up the water to the steaming point, and then if you can imagine that steam being caught and recirculated through their own sets of pipes within those straws to superheat the steam, and that gives it more power. Steam was then transferred to cylinders on either side of the boiler. Steam would go inside of the cylinder, and as the steam went inside the cylinder, it pushed the valve that way, and then as the valve got to a certain point, there was a hole in here, and so the steam could escape, and the valve could go back in. That's a simplified version. There were actually valves where the steam went in one side, then the steam went in the other side, and there was a separate exhaust. So the valve was underpowered this way, and then the valve was underpowered this way. Then the valve was underpowered this way, and the valve was underpowered that way. And each time it would slide exhaust at the same time it would slide exhaust. And there was steam pushing it one way or the other. I don't know if I'm describing this animation very well. We're connected to rods that would connect to the first wheel, and that would go around. So when it would slide this way, it would then go around the center of the wheel, and then it would slide back, and then slide this way, and then slide back. Every time steam would be fed in, it would also be exhausted, so that there was power on each stroke of that. One of the worst mechanical failures these things could have was as these rods were going around, if they got caught, stuck halfway, and they couldn't, jerk them one way or the other. So they were built offset, so that anytime the rods were aligned perfectly in line like this, the other side would be up like this. So that meant that the cylinders were offset to where when one was all the way at its maximum, the one on the other side was only halfway through its stroke. So that meant that as this one was taking a breath, the other one was halfway through exhaling. If you could look down on those pistons, they'd be doing something like this, where one's being intaken while the other one is finishing its cycle. And then it would reverse. As this one starts taking it in, this one would be finishing its cycle. You're getting an intake, exhaust, and every time there was an exhaust, it kind of does a little like a steam engine would. Those kind of like intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, chugga, 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 and that's where the noise of a train comes from. Then there would be connecting rods between those two initial drive wheels and the other wheels, and that would pull the train along. The problem is there was often slippage underneath the wheels. They didn't grab the tracks. That's where the Shay locomotive comes in. The Shay locomotive was geared, and that's what these three vertical cylinders here are. The boiler had to be offset because of all of the mechanics involved with a Shay locomotive. There's like all this stuff, all these gearing and universal joints and a drive shaft here on this side, and so it was heavy on this side, offset by the weight of the boiler on the left side, the fireman's side. So now you have one piston moving back and forth, and that drives these three upright cylinders, connected to a crankshaft, which attached to all of these wheels. And each of these wheels, these were on trucks that moved, that had their own gearing. So all of these wheels were underpowered. It wasn't just one set of wheels pulling everything along. That made this thing heavier, more expensive to build, but it really grabbed the track. So this was revolutionary for the logging and coal mining industries. But as sometimes happens when you're trying to transfer all of that power and all of that torque through a whole lot of metal, these things, I guess, had to be repaired a whole lot, especially if they used substandard steel in the gearing. And since you no longer had like the two cylinders moving back and forth in that predictable forward, back motion, these sound more like a jackhammer when they're going down the rail, because it's not two cylinders with their little 2 and 2 and 2. This has 3 of them, so it's more like dibbity 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 dibbity. I'd have to speed it up. Dibbity 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 dibbity. Dibbity 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 dibbity. Dibbity 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 dibbity. So I'd already made one of these for a smoking contest trophy, and I put it on my socials, and somebody liked it so much and recognized it as a Shay Locomotive that they decided to order one. I said, will you make me a Shay? They recognized it as a Shay Locomotive. A little bummed that I'm missing one attachment here just because I wasn't careful with where I put this little boiler opening. But I am happy that on this one I actually worked to do the offset boiler so that I can put all this other stuff on there. And see, here's the copper that I didn't put on the other one. Also, this should be much longer, like that. This is where the smoke from the firebox would have come out, and this is where any steam would have come out, so this doesn't turn into a pressure cooker without a release valve. And this was built to be an incense burner. So let's throw a cone in and see how well it works. There's so many trucks and tractors through here today, I'm annoyed. All right, realistically, if a locomotive smoked this much, there's something wrong with it, but it's cute. It's cute.